Today I'm teaching on Samson and continuing that whole hall of faith idea. So we're going to spend most of our time in Judges between chapters 13 and 16. But we'll start with Hebrews 11:1. So we're just going to look at that description of what faith is according to Hebrews, since that's the context for the teaching. So I have the NIV. In the NIV, Hebrews 11, verse 1. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So that's what Hebrews 11:1 in the NIV says what faith is. Confidence, hope, and an assurance for what we don't see. All right, so we're just going to read a little bit about who Samson was as a person, then we'll talk about the things that made him a faithful person. Would anyone like to open up the reading in Judges 13, verses 1 through 5?
13, 1 through 5?
Yes.
And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. There was a certain man of Zorah of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. And his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Therefore be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines.
So pretty much like classic textbook origin story as far as the Bible goes. Mom who hasn't had children now does have a child. And the thing that I find interesting or different with Samson is specifically the words it says dedicated to God from the womb. I mean the specific instruction not to cut his hair as well, and so yeah, as long as he doesn't ever cut his hair, he will be undefeated in battle. But yeah, specifically for him in his life, he's dedicated to God from the womb. So not just from like an early age or whatever, from the womb he is God's. And yeah, his main mission in life is to be a leader in destroying the Philistines. Cool, that's Samson and God as a general understanding. So now we'll continue in the same chapter, verses 24 through 25. I guess I will read this. The woman gave birth to a boy and named him Samson. He grew and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Manasseh, or whatever that is, between Zorah and Ashtaol. So yeah, he was born, and his name is Samson, and he grew, and the Spirit was with him. That's one of the more important things I'm trying to get at here, is that God was with him for his whole life. He got to know God from the beginning of his life until the end of it. And also, before we continue, I just wanted to say that Samson's kind of a weird guy. So there's going to be some weird things that are happening. We're kind of going to skip a little bit through some stuff because there's just a lot of material we could read that I think it would distract from the point I'm trying to make. So we're kind of doing the Cliff Notes version of who Samson is. And it's just mostly to show that he's a faithful guy up to a point. So Judges 14 is where we're going next. And we're going chronologically through the books if you get lost right now. So we'll do verses 1 through 7. Would anyone like to read that? Thank you, Jessica.
Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. His father and mother replied, Isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all of our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? But Samson said to his father, Get her for me. She's the right one. His parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at the time they were ruling over Israel. Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring towards them. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. But he neither his father nor his mother what had done. But he told neither his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and he liked her. Sometime later he went back to marry her. He turned aside to look at the lion's carcass, and in it he saw a swarm of bees and some honey.
Thanks. So there's a couple of things to talk about from that passage there. So yeah, first of all, he's got like a love interest. He likes her. That's what it said. He liked her. But I'm just showing that Samson can find a woman, because I'm sure you know where we're going with Delilah. That's the thing he can do. Anyway, also I wanted to point out, this is one of the first, well, not the first, yeah, I think it's the first time it says that the Spirit came powerfully upon him. So again, just sort of illustrating how God's with him and he does crazy, miraculous things all the time. And the fact that, I mean, like, if I ripped a lion in half on my way home, even if it was like not a super big deal, I think I might mention that to somebody. Because like, hey, just like, hey, by the way, Mom, I ripped a lion in half today. Like, why do you think he didn't mention it? I mean, you could say because later on he does like a riddle thing, but I mean, to me it's more like he just cared that little amount about what just happened, because that kind of thing happens to him a lot. Undefeated in battle, so he does all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's just not even worth mentioning. And that's the kind of life he has with God. He does crazy stuff that's like, what? Ripping a lion in half, and it's just like, whatever, no big deal. All right, that's cool. Okay. Oh yeah, and then he liked the one. Cool. Making sure I am somewhat organized. So we're going to stay in 14. We're going to read verses 19 through 20. Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. He went down to Ashkelon, struck down 30 of their men, stripped them of everything, and gave their clothes to those he had explained the riddle. Burning with anger, he returned to his father's home, and Samson's wife was given to one of his companions who attended the feast. So this is more about the Spirit coming upon him and him murdering or slaying 30 people. Context about that. There was a riddle that he told some people concerning his wedding, and if they got it right, he would give them clothes, and if they got it wrong, they would give him clothes. So the people he got it right, he gave them these clothes. And the people he just murdered. So that's cool. Again, Samson's just kind of a weird guy. His job is to kill Philistines, so I don't really know how to. That's what that is. But more specifically, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, and he killed 30 people in an instant. So again, the Spirit of the Lord coming upon him, doing the covenant that God gave to his parents, that if he doesn't cut his hair, he's just a total badass in warfare and general combat stuff. All right, so now we're moving on to chapter 15, verses 12 through 15. Would anyone like to read?
I'll read it.
Cool, thank you, Tiffany.
Okay. And they said to him, "We have come down to bind you, that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines." And Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves." They said to him, "No, we will only bind you and give you into their hands. We will surely not kill you." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that has caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey and put out his hand and took it, and with it he struck 1,000 men.
Yeah. So this is just Samson and his life. Like, he gets taken prisoner, no big deal. I don't even have a weapon. I'll just grab this thing and kill 1,000 people with it. And the Spirit of the Lord came, did it say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, came powerfully upon him. Yeah, context about that, he's been killing Philistines. The Philistines aren't very happy. His tribesmen are a little scared of that. And so they were going to capture him and give them to the Philistines. But yeah, didn't work in any way. So good job. Let's see. All right. Tiffany, would you like to continue reading?
Yeah.
Verses 18 through 20, since
Sure.
you're already there?
18 through 20.
Yeah.
And he was very thirsty. And he called upon the Lord and said, You have granted this great salvation by the hand of your servant. And shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? And God split open the hollow place that is at Lehi, and water came out from it. And when he drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore the name of it was called En-Hakkore. It is at Lehi to this day, and he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years.
So God gives this guy everything he needs. He gives him victory. He chars ropes so he can escape. He gives him water when he asks for it. He knows to ask God for water when he's thirsty. He doesn't think it's a big deal when he rips a lion in half. He kills 1,000 men with the jawbone. So up to this point, he has been a faithful servant to God. Like, he is doing what God wanted him to do, which is kill Philistines and not cut his hair. That's it. That's what God wanted him to do, and that's what he's been doing. So up to this point, you could say he's been a very faithful servant. But part of that is, like I was mentioning earlier, like, he's known God his whole life. So if there's anyone that should have a reasonable expectation of God in their life, especially after ripping a lion in half and doing all the crazy stuff he's done, it should be Samson, right? I mean, I don't know of too many other accounts where somebody had that much of a deep or personal relationship with God for that extended amount of time outside of maybe Jesus. But even then, I think that was maybe a little different than with Samson. The reason I bring this all up is because of what's about to happen with Delilah. So let me see. Yeah, and he expected God to help. So he did have faith in God in that way. When he needed water, he asked God for water. God gave it to him. He expected it. That's why he asked. Also, he was so faithful that he got to judge for 20 years. That is important as well. So that was his whole life up to this moment. He judged for 20 years. He was a faithful servant, cool guy. Weird, but, cool. All right, so now enter Delilah. So we're going to go into Judges 16, and we'll start with the first 4 verses. One day Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in and spent the night with her. The people of Gaza were told, Samson is here. So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, At dawn we'll kill him. But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gate, together with the 2 posts, and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with the woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. So he's still doing the Samson stuff, just wrecking things, kind of playing fast and loose with the rules. But his specific instructions from God were, don't cut your hair, kill Philistines. So he's still doing that. Cool. Then it says, sometime later, he fell in love. So he liked that other girl. He fell in love with this one. I'm sure you can see where this is going if you ever watched All My Children. It's real bad. All right, so we'll continue the next. And so up to this point, you could say God and His love, God has person was his sufficiency. You got everything, water, ripping lions, all that stuff. A girl he liked. Didn't really, but kind of, whatever. But now he has a desire for something more than just that, which is a reasonable human desire, by the way. Right? Verses 5 through 6. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength, and how we can overpower him, so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength, and how you can be tied up and subdued." So he just meets this girl, he's in love with her. She's asking him, "What can I do to tie you up and subdue you?" So I wrote on my notes, pro tip, when someone asks you if they can tie you up and how to subdue you, they're not your friend. Just generally. Regardless of how you might feel about this person, if someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, Tiffany, how do I tie you up and subdue you?" I would say probably just walk away from that. So,
Good advice.
Yeah.
7 through 10. Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I will become as weak as any other man." Then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. With men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you!" But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You have made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied." So Delilah's obviously trying to hurt him. If it wasn't clear before, it's pretty obvious now when there's a bunch of dudes in the room trying to murder him. Also take note of what she says specifically there is that you have made a fool of me. So I'll bring that back later on. Would anyone like to continue reading from verse 10 to verse 16?
Then Delilah said to Samson, "Look, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now please tell me what you may be bound with." So he said to her, "If they bind me securely with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man." Therefore Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them, and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And there were men lying in wait, staying in the room, but he broke them off with his arms like a thread. Delilah said to Samson, "Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of the loom." So she wove it tightly with the batten of the loom, and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he awoke from his sleep, and pulled out the batten and the web from the loom. Then she said to him, "How can you say I love you, when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and have not told me where your great strength lies." And it came to pass, when she pestered him daily with her words, and pressed him, so that his soul was vexed to death.
So, 3 times so far, she's tried to murder him. And up to this point, you could say he's being dumb, but he's still being faithful. He hasn't given her the secret. I don't know why he's even talking to her. That's pretty stupid. But, he still hasn't betrayed the instruction that God has given him. You could argue he's kind of not really following the rest of the law, but the specific instructions God gave to his parents, he's still following. And, I don't think he's killed any Philistines during this time, so I don't know. Maybe he did, but he didn't mention it. But regardless, he's still somewhat faithful in this moment in time. And so like I was saying before, with the specific terminology where she said, what'd she say? "You made a fool of me." So this time, she says, "How can you say you love me?" And so that's where that comes in, where this guy, he has this, like I said, it's a pretty natural human desire to want to be loved. Up to this point, he had the love of God. He had that, but for some reason that wasn't enough for him. Which again, I don't know if that's something I would fault somebody for, but at this point, he's putting Delilah and his desire for her love above what he knows God has for him, what God has shown him he has for him. And he's putting her above that. Now, I can't say that this is like a deliberate action. This is so much more subtle than that. It happens and he has this desire, and he's not thinking clearly, obviously, because this woman's trying to murder him, and he's like, but what if I just get her to love me? Like, this is probably what he's thinking in his head, like, well, what else could he be thinking? And so, part of my point, so I got like 2 points of this teaching. This is one of them. Unhealthy relationships, like, this is a pretty good example of them, but and this is sort of leading him down the path, again, to not being faithful, but it wasn't just like a snap decision that he made. It said he fell in love with her, and then it was just like a slow progression. He's still trying to be faithful, and he doesn't want to die also. And then, we'll continue reading on. Let me see if I hit everything with that. Also, some of the things she's saying aren't completely unreasonable. I mean, the whole, fact that she's tried to murder him 3 times or whatever, but how can you say, I love you, when you won't confide in me, is what the NIV says. That's some stuff you'll hear in, a normal relationship. And so, my point is just that, sometimes be aware of what are happening in relationships. I'm not even saying that you have to bail on somebody, but if something's distracting you from God, and that person or that desire for that person is taking place of what you know God has for you. If you've had this level of experience with him, then maybe you should pay attention to that and maybe do something differently and avoid what's about to happen to Samson. All right, so we'll continue. We'll start back in verse 15, go to 22. David, would you like to read?
Absolutely. Which verse?
We'll start back in 15 through 22.
Then Delilah pouted, "How can you tell me I love you when you don't share your secrets with me? You've made fun of me 3 times now, and you still haven't told me what makes you so strong." She tormented him with her nagging day after day until he was sick to death of it. Finally, Samson shared his secret with her. "My hair has never been cut," he confessed, "for I was dedicated to God as a Nazirite from birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as anyone else." Delilah realized he had finally told her the truth, so she sent for the Philistine rulers. "Come back one more time," she said, "for he has finally told me his secret." So the Philistine rulers returned with the money in their hands. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep with his head in her lap, and then she called in a man to shave off the 7 locks of his hair. In this way she began to bring him down, and his strength left him. Then she cried out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." When he woke up, he thought, "I will do as before and shake myself free." But he didn't realize the Lord had left him. So the Philistines captured him and gouged out his eyes. They took him to Gaza, where he was bound with bronze chains and forced to grind grain in the prison. But before long, his hair began to grow back.
So he done goofed, we'll say. He messed up pretty severely there. His eyes are gouged out. He's gone from being a total badass who's a leader of a nation to being a slave with no eyes. And that's a pretty extreme example of how things might go when you abandon your covenant with God. But I'm just saying, God's got a deal with you. His deal right now is Jesus Christ. But if you decide to walk away from that, these are things that can happen. Which this is just a consequence to his actions. It's not like God made these things happen. It's like God was trying to prevent these things from happening, but now he can no longer prevent those things. Also, thankfully, Samson's even still alive, because really he should be dead. But so he put a desire for Delilah above the word of God, which the word of God in his life to his parents: don't cut your hair, kill Philistines. Be a leader in killing Philistines. That's out the window. And one thing I was going to point out too is that God has given him everything he's needed and more up to this point. So in this situation, he could have asked for a wife. But he lost his mind over Delilah. Which sounds crazy, but I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in love, but it's crazy. And that's why I'm bringing it up, is to pay attention to these things. Stuff. So like when stuff's hitting the fan, you're like, oh God, what's happening? Then remember. Just remember. Because yeah, we're not always thinking clearly in those types of situations. Have any of you ever desired a person that much where it's like, or anything? I mean, you don't have to answer. If you'd like to, you can, but it's more like a question just to think about. If there's ever been a situation or something like that in your life where it's just like taking you away from God, taking you away from what you know is like the good things that you're doing in your life, and you're doing less of those things because you want to impress this person or whatever the situation is, just think about that, because that's exactly what happened here. And again, it's a subtle thing. I mean, it sounds like it looks crazy here. I mean, it really does. But like, as the man Samson, there's no way. Like, he just up and decided, F it, I'm done with you, God. You know, it was a gradual progression that happened, and it was something. There was flags all over the place, but he still ignored them because his desire for her was that great. All right, we're going to continue reading. Judges 16, verses 23 through 27. Would anyone else like to read?
Sure.
Thank you, Andrew.
Verse 23. Then the lords of the Philistines gathered them together to offer a great sacrifice unto Dagon their god, and to rejoice. For they said, Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And when the people saw him, they praised their God. For they said, Our God has delivered into our hands our enemy, and the destroyer of our country, which slew many of us. And it came to pass, when their hearts were merry, that they said, Call for Samson, that he may make us sport. And they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them sport. And they set him between the pillars. And Samson said unto the lad that held him by the hand, Suffer me, that I may feel the pillars whereupon the house stands, that I may lean upon them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were upon the roof about 3,000 men and women that beheld Samson made sport.
So, yeah, Samson went, again, from being a leader of a nation, being the strongest man that was like ever on the planet, ripping lions in half, killing 1,000 men with a freaking jawbone, to being a blind cripple who has to hold on to a pillar of a building so he doesn't fall over the place. That he's a jester, you know, he's from his enemies, the people that he's been killing all this time. He hates them, they hate each other. These are the people to which he's captive. He's completely humiliated. He has no reason, from a logical perspective, in any worldly sense, to expect anything or anyone to come help him. And specifically with God, in that area where it said previously that the Spirit had left him. It said his hair is growing back, but the Spirit left him, so he has no reason right now to really expect in the same way he did before. When he was keeping the covenant, he had a reason to expect. And he was faithful, but he had so many more reasons to expect God to come through, because he was fulfilling what God had asked him to do. Now he's no longer doing that, obviously, and he's in like one of the worst possible situations outside of being dead. Let's see. Points. Oh, I was also going to point out, because the symbolism is really good. I mean, I just thought, you know, he's wandering around, like before he was so powerful, and now he's wandering around blind in a temple, and that's his life with God, and then without God, now he's wandering around blind and just hoping for anything to happen to change the situation. And so I was going to say, aren't we all blind without God's help in a certain sense, you know? All right, and then, so yeah, before we continue, we're going to go back to Hebrews 11:1 and read the definition of faith again. Just as a refresher, because this is, like I said, he was a faithful man before, but you could argue that the faith that he was exhibiting before was kind of relatively easy. Like, this is, I think, his defining moment as a man of faith with God. All right, so Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and an assurance about what we do not see. And he is literally blind right now. He can't see anything. He has no reason to have any confidence, maybe a hope. But yeah, there's no logical reason to have any of that stuff. And yet he will. Okay, Andrew, would you read that next verse, verse 28, please?
Sure. And Samson called unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee, only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes.
So yeah, the fact that he even asked says a lot, which again, he's known God his whole life. He understands God's character better than most people ever would. And he done goofed. But then he remembered who God is. You know, God's love. And this is before Christ. Again, there's no lawful reason to expect God's mercy in this situation. And he's still asking for it. And this moment's a culmination of the remorse that he might have, maybe feeling guilty about betraying God, all the situations and things that are going on in his head, probably up until this moment, all the regrets you might have when you're missing 2 eyes and being a jester. And then remembering his life experience, knowing God as a child, ripping lions in half, all that cool stuff. Yeah, a little reason to expect. Didn't see anything. All right, cool. Now we will continue reading verse 27 through 31. Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All the rulers of the Philistines were there, and on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, Let me die with these Philistines. Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he lived. Then his brothers and father, prosperity. Also, don't give up on yourself just because you screwed up. Samson royally screwed up. But God was still there for him. Remember, in a situation like that, just remember all that God has already shown you. You know, I mean, even if it hasn't been as much as your whole lifetime, like with Samson, just remember what God has shown you, and ask to be with Him again. If you're in a situation where you feel like giving up on yourself, ask for God again. Ask for that back, and He'll make it right, and make it as right as it can be. If you're missing your eyes, well, you know, hey, that's the consequence. But He'll make it right the best He can, and you'll have God back again. If you ever get to that point, I'm just saying that in case. Just in case. All right. Yeah, that's what I got.
Yay!
That's awesome.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks,
Sure.
Justin.
No problems.